Welcome back to the Play by Play Podcast YouTube channel, where we are returning with the segment of The Corner, where we cover all breaking news within the boxing and MMA world. And in today's episode, we got a two-parter where we cover two of boxing and MMA's newest stars over the weekend, that being Moses Itauma with his first-round knockout of Dillian Whyte, and then Khamzat Chimaev winning in the main event of UFC 319 over Dricus du Plessis to become the new UFC middleweight champion. But real fast before we get into the video, I want to thank you guys so much for all the support that you have given the channel, as well as encourage you to go down below, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like on the video, as well as share with your friends. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those ads are going to be down below so that you will never miss for whenever the podcast decides to upload an episode. And as you can see really quick, we do have a brand new background, a brand new scene for y'all. I have just recently moved back to Las Cruces to begin my junior year of college. I'm super excited for it. And let me know what you think about this look. I kind of like it. I think that it shows more of the room and whatnot. We were able to get a little bit better lighting. So let me know what you think about all that down below. And without further ado, I won't waste any more of your guys' time. Let's get into the video. So let's start in the boxing world with Moses Itauma. Now, to be honest, there were a lot of people that were worried about this fight. They were going into this event believing that Dillian Whyte had a legitimate chance and that he would be able to take Moses Itauma the distance and possibly pull up the upset. And I get it, right? There are a lot of big-time fans of Dillian Whyte, especially within the UK. The guy has been around for a very long time. He's a big-time veteran. And he's put together some very exciting fights and some very exciting finishes over the year. But if I'm being honest, I just never really felt that Moses was in any real threat in this fight. Yes, Dillian has big-time knockout power, but the speed advantage that was going to go on within this fight was just going to be enormous. It wasn't even going to be comparable. And I think that you saw that in the fight in that one round. Moses, he started off a little bit slow, kind of analyzing Dillian, what he wanted to do. Whyte was kind of almost scared to let his hands go at all. He really did not want to get countered immediately by the faster Moses. And so he kind of took his time, paddling around, moving around the ring, and Moses kind of just followed him. And once he was able to kind of hit him with his first couple combinations, I think he really felt that Dillian was simply outmatched, that he was going to be able to get him out of there super quickly with whatever he threw. And because of that, he ended up really just throwing the kitchen sink at him, ended up connecting with a pretty winding up left hook, I believe it was. It was either left hook or right hook, and knocked Dillian down to the floor. It was super impressive from Moses to outclass a veteran that has, 15, 16, 17 plus years of experience on you, who has been in the ring with the best of the best in the heavyweight division right now, too. Guys like Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, the likes. That is a performance that is not going to be matched probably for the rest of the year, really, unless we see, a very big-time surprise knockout, or unless you want to put that up there with the likes of like Alexander Usyk going out and knocking out Daniel Dubois. The big-time question for Moses Itauma, now that he really is in the upper echelon of the heavyweight division, is what is next for this young kid? At 20 years old, where do you really go with him? And this is where I get a little bit worried because, yes, he is very skillful, but there is going to come a time where the experience definitely begins to weigh out. And it's because of that I don't think that we should really rush this man. Yes, you could definitely make history, make him one of, if not the youngest heavyweight champion in the history of boxing and whatnot. Yes, you could throw him into mega fights right now. I know that is what Turki Al-Sheikh is possibly leaning towards, putting him in the ring early with the Alexander Usyk, or maybe even going up against Anthony Joshua or whatnot. But I just think that we need to slow the brakes down on this man. He has the rest of his career in front of him, man. He has the next 15, 16, 17 plus years as a potential future heavyweight champion. I would love to see him potentially in another tune-up fight against, still a middle to top tier contender. I love the call-outs of guys like Filip Hrgović, of guys such as, he didn't call this guy out, but Zhilei Zhang, Ajit Kabayal potentially to be in there. Guys that are within that 2 to 6 range, possibly within the rankings, to be able to get them up there. Hrgović at times can really slow down and is a pretty predictable boxer and tends to box and throw combinations within patterns. So I think that Moses, with his fighting IQ, will be able to pretty much pierce through anything that Hrgovic really has to offer. Then you have Zhilei Zhang, who I think is just a really slow starter, doesn't have a really big-time gas tank. Of course, that would be a tricky fight for Itauma, just seeing as he would have to avoid the power from Zhang, especially super, super early. But once he is able to drag it within the later rounds, he would definitely have the big-time advantage. Then Ajit Kabayal, I think that would be a mega fight. He is towards the top of the heavyweight division as well. He's probably one of the next in line to potentially go off and face off against Usyk. That would be a huge, huge win to boost Itaama's career even more. And then if he's able to pass one of those tests with flying colors, then we go after an Usyk. Then, potentially if Usyk goes out and either loses his heavyweight title or has to relinquish it because he can't defend them all and he's taking a little bit of breaks in between, have him challenge for heavyweight championships against guys like Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker and those type of guys. And I promise you that he does have the ability. This man is special, I'm telling you, to go out and outclass those guys with his speed combination, with how light on his feet he is at his size, with the maturity and boxing intelligence that he shows at such a young age. The sky is the limit for this young man. And I honestly believe that he has real potential by the end of his career to become one of the best heavyweight champions of all time. Now we shift from the ring to the octagon, where UFC 319 took place this weekend as well, just yesterday on Saturday at the time that I am recording this, where, like I said at the beginning of the episode, Khamzat Chimaev did defeat Dricus du Plessis by unanimous decision in the UFC 319 main event. To say that I was disappointed would be an understatement. It definitely was domination from Khamzat all around the board. I mean, he was able to ragdoll Dricus du Plessis whenever he wanted to. The first 3 or 4 rounds, I believe, he shot in and was able to get a takedown within the first 10 seconds. It was very, very impressive from Khamzat. But the part that I was a little bit disappointed in is he didn't really look like he was making a very conscious effort to really go ahead and go for submissions. And I understand wrestling is never going to be exciting, especially from an MMA standpoint when you compare it to, standing on the feet and striking with someone. But I would have liked to see more activity. There were opportunities, especially within that crucifix position on the side control, where he could potentially have gone for a choke. And instead of that, he kind of just stalled out time. He was able to, at moments, be able to pin Dricus's whole body down to the ground, both of his arms, so he couldn't really do anything. And even when he had his back, he didn't really make any real attempt to put in any underhooks there to potentially go for a rear naked choke. He was kind of just kneeing Dricus's back legs, trying to tire him out, which is fine. But I think if you really do want to be the next UFC star and you want to be this big-time boogeyman and whatnot, it would be fun to kind of do what he was doing previously, which was to have those first or second round submissions, which is what we were expecting out of this event. And unfortunately, it just fell flat. For DDP, it is really disappointing to be able to lose your title, especially when you couldn't really do anything. You couldn't even really land a big-time significant strike. He did have a really solid submission attempt towards the end of the fight in about the last 30 seconds. He was able to turn the tide on Khamzat and potentially go for a choke. Didn't end up working out, so I applaud his effort. And, by the end of the first round, man, with just the suffocating pressure that Khamzat was able to put on him, all that weight, it just completely tired him out. And that is what is so special about that type of wrestling, the Khamzat wrestling, the Islam wrestling, the Khabib type of wrestling. Those types of styles, they just exhaust even the toughest of guys. And we know how tough DDP can truly be. We've seen his fights against Sean Strickland and Israel Adesanya. He is willing to go through wars and still able to come out on top in the end. As for what's next for Khamzat, he has been talking about potentially coming back for UFC 321 in Abu Dhabi on the co-main event for the Tom Aspinall fight. That is great to hear because there were a lot of concerns previously to the fight about him potentially not being an active champion. Obviously, he's had a lot of injury problems in the past and also big-time health issues. So there were people that were wondering, will he be willing to fight a couple of times a year? It's very clear that he wants to go in there, and especially if he's going through these matchups where he's not taking a lot of damage, Dana can definitely go ahead and shove him in there. I don't know how probable UFC 321 is honestly going to be for him, just because it's kind of a quick turnaround, especially with the number one contender fight happening at UFC 320, I believe, in just a month's time in September between Imamov and I can't remember the guy that he is facing off against Outside of that, potentially a rematch with DDP down the line could be a potential matchup. I would definitely like to see DDP, improve his wrestling defense because he couldn't see any of the takedowns coming. Israel Adesanya would definitely be a big fight. I definitely don't think it would be a competitive matchup. I think that Khamzat would ragdoll him too. Sean Strickland, it would be kind of interesting just seeing as there's such a big gap between them in the striking department. But again, the wrestling, I just think that Chimaev would just be too good. And outside of that, that's kind of all there really is for Chimaev right now in the middleweight division. And DDR potentially as well. And that could be an interesting matchup just because he does have great takedown defense. But I do still see Khamzat as just the more dominant fighter. Outside of that, he has talked about possibly becoming a triple champ. So maybe going ahead and fighting the winner of Islam versus Jack Della Maddalena, or potentially fighting the winner of Magomed Ankalaev. I apologize, I just had a brain fart. And Alex Pereira. Him versus Alex Pereira would be a very huge fight for the UFC, and that's really what the UFC needs right now is big time stars. I do think that Khamzat's star value did take a little bit of a hit just seeing as the fight wasn't that entertaining. And it's unfortunate now the majority of the UFC does have a lot of big-time wrestling guys. I mean, you have Merab, you have Islam, you have Khamzat, you have Ankalaev at the light heavyweight division. Really the only big-time, massive, entertaining fighters is Alexander Pantoja, who has already cleared through the flyweight division like 2 or 3 times at this point. Alexander Volkanovski is pretty entertaining, but he is towards the latter of his career, likely only has about 2, maybe 3 fights left. Ilya Topuria, we all know how he is. You have Alex Pereira, who, if he beats Ankalaev, is a big-time knockout artist. And then Itauma Aspinall, obviously, we are awaiting for his return to the octagon. So you have about half of the champions right now that are exciting. The other half are a little bit boring in terms of style. So that does stink for the UFC. But it is clear from the event itself that Khamzat can definitely drive a crowd. He can bring them around, and that they do generally like him and they want to come out and see him for whenever he fights. So just would like to see him be a little bit more active on the ground and go ahead and go for those submissions. But there is definitely no other way to say it. If the UFC can play this right and Khamzat can up his activity, there is potentially another star in the making, which would be absolutely huge for the UFC going forward. But overall, let me know what you think down below about these 2 fights. What do you think is potentially next for both Moses Itauma and Khamzat Chimaev? Do you think it's a little bit early to potentially push Itauma towards potentially championship glory? How do you think that Khamzat can really improve himself and potentially being more appealing to the crowd and making more exciting fights? Or do you think that he should potentially just stick to his style and wrestle and nobody should really complain about it because he's so dominant? We did watch Khabib Nurmagomedov do that for a little bit of time, and everyone seemed to like him. So maybe this is just something that people will be able to be willing to swallow and be able to accept at the end of the day. So let me know about all that down below, as well as subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing with your friends. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those ads are going to be down below so that you will never miss from whenever the podcast decides to upload an episode. And without further ado, guys, that is all that I have for you guys today. I will see you guys on the next one. I hope that you guys have an incredible start to your week, and peace.